Lesson 1-2, Concept 2, Multiplying Fractions. So we just got finished multiplying a fraction by an integer, and now we're going to look at multiplying two fractions together. The process is very similar. All right, when we multiplied an integer by a fraction, our first step was multiplying the integer by the numerator, and here we're basically doing the same thing. We're multiplying the numerators together. So our numbers are 2 and 5. So we'll do 2 times 5, and that equals 10. And then our second step, before we just carried the denominator over, but that was because our first denominator was always 1. And so the other denominator times 1 would always be the same. So now we have a different denominator, so we can't just carry our denominator over. We're going to have to do the multiplication. So now we have 3 times 6, and that's going to equal 18. And that is our second step done. Now we have to look at step number 3, simplifying. So I notice that both these numbers are even, which means it is not a simplified fraction. They both have at least 2 as a common factor. So I'm going to start by taking that 2 out. So I'm going to take 10 and divide it by 2, which is going to give me 5. And then I'm going to take 18 and divide it by 2, which is going to give me 9. And now I see that I have a prime number, so I know that my fraction is simplified. And I'm all done with that one. Now, part of the issue that some students have when multiplying fractions, or even when just using fractions, is the way they can appear when they have negative fractions. So you could have a negative fraction that looks like 1/4, negative 1/4 with the negative sign out here. You could also have, and this is the same as a negative 1/4. So these two are the same, where your negative sign is up on the numerator. Or you could have a 1/4. All three of these have the same value. Doesn't matter where the negative sign is. It could be on the denominator, could be on the numerator, or it could be out in front of the whole fraction. Okay. Now, the tricky thing is when you get into having multiple negative signs. So if I had negative 1/4, that is not going to be the same as negative 1/4. Just like when you multiply two negative numbers together, when you have a fraction with negatives in the numerator and the denominator, they will actually cancel each other out. And so this is actually equal to positive 1/4. So when you're doing multiplication problems with fractions, or fractions with negative signs or negative fractions, be very careful that you always keep track of those negative signs. And if you ever end up with more than one, you're going to have to cancel those two out. Okay, that's it for this video.